right. Well, they say there's cold and then there's wind-aided cold. And I know that it wasn't cold, Tony, last weekend near Chicago, but Steve and I talked about this the other day. Mighty drab and dreary conditions there. How much of an impact did that have on the game? What do you take away from this game in regards to real concerns versus that was left in Illinois?
Well, we saw stuff in that game that we've never seen before. You see CJ Stroud completing like 38% of his passes, which has never happened, throwing for under 100 yards, which has never happened. So when you have these outliers that have never happened, throwing crazy passes 10 yards away from the player, from a receiver, when you see stuff like that and you don't acknowledge that the wind played a large role in that, you're being dishonest. And there is stuff in that game. You see Ohio State lining up for a snap and the ball rolls away. I saw a first down marker go flying. I saw a sign, a wall advertisement come off of the wall and hit a photographer in the back of the end zone. Like, wasn't paying attention. Like, this is all just going on as the game is going on. And we rewatched the TV broadcast, and you see the start of the game where Ohio State's offense is just being blasted with rain in their face, because it was a horizontal rain to start the game as well. So you got CJ Stroud like squinting as he's getting ready for the ball, and it was the opponent wasn't Northwestern. The opponent was the conditions, and so I know people are saying that Ohio State's using another excuse. And Ryan Day even on Tuesday was like, I don't want to get into detail about how difficult it was because it sounds like excuse making. You need to pick up a yard on 3rd and 1 regardless of what's going on. But when you look at everything that happened with that offense, and what Northwestern did, they threw the ball twice against the wind. Like, if you don't take these things into account when you are looking at this and you're saying, it wasn't that bad, it was as bad as any of those players and worse than any of those coaches had seen or were expecting.
Steve, we talked about it during our podcast. Appreciate you being on our Big Ten Paradigm podcast a couple days ago uploaded. But your thoughts about what is real and what's been left at Northwestern?
Yeah, it was the worst conditions that I can recall for a game in many years. Impossible to throw the ball in that weather, as Tony kind of outlined. And, ordinarily Stroud's passes have a lot of zip on them, and they were kind of holding up in the wind in the air. And Northwestern probably broke up 5 or 6 passes just because there was time for their guys to break on the ball and make plays on the ball that should have been completed. There were 4 or 5 balls that were in the receiver's hands that got dropped, straight drops that should have been completed, including one over-the-shoulder touchdown to Emeka Egbuka that, he would have walked into the end zone on that one. That didn't happen. So, people who, want to give Stroud, a bad mark for that game, I don't think they're being realistic. And Ohio State had to win the game left-handed. I think Northwestern, as we watched the game unfold, had a much better plan on both sides of the ball on how to contend with it. I'm not sure if Ohio State considered it to be real or if they just thought they would show up and out-talent the wind and Northwestern. I don't know, but it didn't look very good from the Ohio State perspective until about the middle of the 3rd quarter, and then I think they started to wear Northwestern down a little bit, and that's where things kind of made a turn for Ohio State.
I said it, Mark. I said it on one of my podcasts that I was on this week about how, to Steve's point, Northwestern did handle it better in terms of the offense. And my thought is that's because Northwestern has fewer options. Ohio State has more options, except those options aren't exactly what you need in that kind of condition. And Ohio State still wants to throw the ball, and they have their receivers. So you try to use them. Northwestern doesn't have that same kind of talent. So they're like, we have this and we can do this. Ohio State has, Ryan Day's like, no, let's try to do this. Let's try to do this. Let's see if we can do this. Northwestern's just like, we don't have that. We're just going to do this. We're going to do the Wildcat, and we're going to throw short. And that was the basis of their offense. And that was about the best attack that you could have for this game. You go to the Wildcat and you outnumber the defense. You throw short to avoid the wind. But Ohio State, they tried to throw downfield some with the wind, against the wind, and It wasn't, and the thing is, the wind didn't just go, if you're watching on TV, right to left. It was also blowing towards the camera, so it was coming at an angle, which you saw. And I charted like all of CJ Stroud's incompletions that weren't drops or broken up. They were affected by the wind blowing it towards the camera. You can see like all of the incompletions drifted towards the camera more than they should have, or than they normally would have. So it's just we could talk about the weather and until the cows come home, and they'd be flying in that wind almost with the way it was, but just things you've never seen before. And I think that's you can explain a lot of it away, but still, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, you got to pick those up.